Good morning. Today we're going to dive into Revelation 13, the seven-headed beast. Many people think that this is about Rome or emperors or some ancient history that's already gone. And a lot of very educated, well-spoken people have said this for centuries. But the thing about Revelation and Daniel, which are hand in hand, is that they are for the end times. Not the last days, which is what began in Jesus' time, but that very specific time of the end. And so, if you weren't in that time, then you very possibly miscalculated. So what if the Bible is more plain than that and points to something much older, something that is really at the root of why people, why does God allow this? Why are things like this? It's because it is much more complicated. It's not just a simple, there's just God. True love only comes from the ability to truly choose. If someone can't choose, then what they feel it's not real. And so in order to have what he wanted and what he envisioned, it could only be accomplished if everyone could choose. Just like you've heard, very rich speak about, when you have this, it's hard to know if people really want you for you or for what you have. Well, that part isn't really difficult for him. He knows why someone wants him or what they want. But without the choosing, that is irrelevant. And so he created the heavens, which implies first, and the earth. And which that's a whole other thing about whether that came first. That's not what we're going into. But it also talks about these beings that are more closely related to him and what he is and power. Princes and the morning stars and things of that nature. And some of them, it talks about, they did choose. They just didn't choose to serve him. They, for whatever reason, went against him. And that is what is going on. Because he also has the ones that didn't go against him. They're looking on. And just as we look on and like, well, he says this, and then there's that, and this is what they're doing, and here's what's happened because they did this. And so it's much more involved. And the reason of Jesus coming and all these other things of the whole Bible is what began with that situation, because then it led to what went on in Eden. And so what if it points to something older in Revelation, back to the beginning of that, something wilder that is very difficult for a lot of people to put their heads around. And part of that is plainly stated the fault of the church, because they do not touch this. It is such a because I, as in close association with pastors and people of that nature, in private we discuss these things, but in the main, with the people that are being taught, ooh, it gets very uncomfortable. People get nervous. You can literally see their expressions like, oh my God, they didn't bring that up, did they? So let's unpack why Rome became the go-to, why it doesn't fit, and what the text actually says. And we'll use the Bible to do this. So we have Revelation 13, Genesis 6, and a few more spots. And it's going to get a little bit crazy. So why Rome? So why did people think this beast was Rome? So imagine this. It's the first few centuries AD. Christians are under Rome's boot, persecution. Emperors are considered gods. And then Revelation hits, the book of Revelation from John. A lot of beasts with 7 heads, 10 horns, rising from the sea, ruling the earth. And then in chapter 17 of Revelation, verse 9, it says, then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all the nations because of me. And it talks about the 7 heads or 7 mountains and things of that nature. Rome's famous 7 hills, easy match, right? Then you add 13:3. One of the heads is wounded but healed, and scholars like Irenaeus back in 180 AD said that's Nero. Nero died in 68 AD, stabbed in his throat, wounded, but rumors swirled that he'd return. Rome revived, beast healed, done deal. Then 1710, 5 kings have fallen. One is to come. Count Roman emperors, Julius, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, 5 down. Nero 6, 1 is. Next guy, Galba. To come, 7 heads, 7 kings, 7 hills. Rome fits like a glove. By 300 AD, people like Victorinus were sold. Revelations about Rome falling in 70 AD when Jerusalem burned. The terrorists today still run with it. It's history. Sounds like that's a rap, right? But Rome's emperors didn't stop at 7. Dozens pile up. Nero's dead, really, really dead, not coming back. And Revelation 13:7 says this beast ruled all nations, tribes, and tongues. Rome never ruled China or America. Then you have chapter 13, verse 13, fire from heaven, signs deceiving the world. Rome's legions or emperors or no part ever did anything like that. So what happens frequently with prophecy and is they just like to leave off big chunks of it. It's like, oh, let's don't talk about that because that messes up my theory. But if your theory is right, it shouldn't be so easily undone, especially by the thing that why you even had to make a theory. So Revelation is not a history book. It's a vision for the end. Things which must soon take place. But soon to God can be 1,000 years or more. And then in Revelation 13:2, the dragon gave his power, his throne, his authority. That's Satan. Rome's bad, but it's just not really that kind of equation. Emperors weren't in abysses, the abyss. The beast is not, and will come out of the abyss. Rome was, but is not when John wrote. It was still kicking. So no abyss, no coming out of the abyss either. just politics. So now we have Revelation chapter 9. Abaddon, angel of the abyss. Then in verse 14 of chapter 9, 4 angels bound at the river Euphrates. They're released. There's a lot of releasing going on. In order to have been released, you had to have been confined or bound to start with. So then in chapter 11 of Revelation, verse 7, the beast that rises from the abyss kills the 2 witnesses. Still not Rome. It just doesn't work. These were bound, locked up entities released to do war. Rome's emperors did not crawl out of pits or rivers. They were born. And then you have 16:12 of Revelation. Those 4 angels come from the east. Rome's east was Persia, not some cosmic jail. So an honest reading of it, it doesn't work that way. It's something more ancient than even Caesar. And then Genesis 6, before Rome, before Israel, sons of God, angels, took wives. And from that came the word, another one of the words that they do not like, don't want to talk about. Let's call it something that else. Nephilim came from that. And then Jude 1, verse 6, angels who left their domain, kept in chains of darkness. And then 2 Peter 2, verse 4, cast into pits, reserved for judgment. This is stuff that's going back to the flood. It's not talking about Rome. So how did it get missed? And what the text actually says. Revelation 13:1, a beast, 7 heads, 10 horns, rises from the sea. Revelation 17:10, 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, 1 to come. 17:11, the beast itself is an 8th, tied to the 7. Who are these kings? It's not emperors or rulers. Genesis, back to it. And this is where it will keep going. And it's also like perfect. The way, it's a full circle. It began with that trouble, ends with that trouble, all cleaned up at one time. And then here's the book that's also tied directly to all this stuff that they do not like. And once again, because Peter and Jude quote from it, then to me that opens the door to quote from it. Why can they say something out of it and I not? 200 angels rebelled. It's actually more than that. It was the leaders of others. It says some were leaders of 10,000. It's a vast number. They rebelled. And then the leaders, and maybe more than that, but definitely the leaders were bound. Head 1 of the beast, Abaddon. Meaning that this, speaks about this one that's being released. We're just going to assume that that being has a head. So 1 being released, that's 1. Revelation 9:11, angel of the abyss, king of the locusts. Now remember, Jesus said he gave them authority over the scorpions and things of that nature of the earth. Locked in a pit, released. So that's 1. Now these beings and these angels that descended, they ruled the earth for around 1,200 years. That's one of the heads. Head number 2 through 5, 4 angels at the river Euphrates released, prepared to kill a third of mankind. 4 angels it speaks of in Enoch, chapter 10, verse 11. 4 ish angels buried under the rocks. Same thing. Head 6, Satan. 12, verse 9. Dragon cast to earth. He is the one that is, in John's day, ruling this age. Then we have 2 Corinthians 4:4 that says, the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. 13:2, he hands power to the beast. That's in Revelation 13:2. And then number 7. So, in Enoch, it talks about, it says, and again the Lord said to Raphael, bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the darkness. Split open the desert which is in Judea and cast him in. And fill the hole by covering him with rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him be there forever until the day of judgment. And on that day he shall be hurled into the fire. The whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. See, and then you have Leviticus, and every time it's like this entire subject is just like off limits. They change the words. It's an unbearable thing for the powers that be, so to speak, in the church. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for Yahweh and the other lot for Azazel. And Aaron shall present the goat upon which the lot fell for Yahweh and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be set alive before Yahweh to make atonement for him, to send him away for Azazel into the wilderness. So, the one that rises from the abyss, and it is a separate one. It has its, and just like this, these others were bound. In Enoch it says, bind Semjaza, or however you say his name, and his associates under the hills of the earth. But Azazel gets a private cell, so to speak. He's spoken of differently. And the beast that rises from the earth that looks like a lamb and speaks like a dragon is different than the rest. It's all by itself. No locust coming out, no nothing. And so that is the head that is wounded and healed. That's Azazel. These are not humans. They are cosmic pre-flood rulers. They ran the earth for around 1,200 years, warring, teaching war, and then imprisoned. Jude and Peter both confirmed this. So we positively in the Bible have it confirmed that they are bound. And then we have Revelation being released. It's such a straightforward thing. Satan falls. The 4 angels released. Azazel rises. That's every head. That's all of them. Satan, Abaddon, the 4 angels. That's 5. And they're the one that rises that looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. That's seven. 7 heads that make up a kingdom that once ruled, that once was, but is not, but will. Because at that point, there's another verse in 17 that God has agreed to hand over their royal power so that they can accomplish his purpose. Well, this now explains signs and miracles that it talks about all through Revelation. So, why did Rome take over? Why did they why was this the thing? Well, we've already seen that when it comes to this subject, none of this is anything that the church wants to discuss in any way whatsoever. Now, that may have been God's will, it's hard to know why, but regardless, they do not, and they have not. And it's only been in the last 20 years that any of this has really kind of like started to come to the surface, where anybody even, because I personally, the book of Enoch, it took me a very, very long time before I would even consider looking at it. I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for months, and then carefully approached it. And then nothing about it was blasphemous or heretical or in any way. And in fact, in it speaks of Jesus coming, which is one of the requisites of a book that you can, believe may be from God. And so this is, information that has been, for whatever reason, just nobody even really knew about it for a very long time. And Rome is just easier. Hills, emperors, history we can touch. Angels in pits, that's way too wild. It's too old, and it's too real if you believe the Bible. The church frequently, sometimes, and people, fantasy is more comfortable. Nero reborn, not changed, snapping from superhuman heavenly beings that have gone to the dark side. But Jesus said, do not be deceived. These rulers, life forms from heaven that hate God, spirits. Revelation is their comeback, ruling again and deceiving and killing the 2 witnesses that God sent to tell people what's what. Today, we have the red heifers in Israel. We have the deadline on that for September or October of this year. Temple talk from the Temple Institute, Muslims raging, and Christians waiting. Jews looking for the Messiah. And then we have the one that looks like a lamb, but speaks like a dragon. It's not Rome. It's something older. Listen to the scripture and think about it. Revelation is not a puzzle for, the high IQ. It's a warning. And plus, God has said many times that it's not the learned that he reveals these things to. Rome's a shadow. These are the storm that makes Revelation actually make more sense. Read it plainly. Bound angels loose for war. Pray. Think about it. Ask God. The beast heads aren't dead emperors. They are bound kings, angels, princes, like it talks about Michael, one of the foremost princes. Imagine someone like the archangel Michael turning against God. I mean, it clearly speaks about the cherub in the Bible that was in Eden that turned against God. Powerful beings. So maybe reread it and think about it in the context of the whole Bible. Peace.